The early morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the concert hall. The empty chairs stood in neat rows, and the polished wooden floor reflected the light in a soft glow. It was quiet now, almost too quiet, but that calm would not last long. Soon the hall would be filled with music, voices, and people. Today was the day of the big benefit concert, and behind this event were months of planning, struggles, and dreams. Ted, the main organizer, walked through the hall, clipboard in hand. He had been awake since dawn, making calls, checking schedules, and reminding everyone of last-minute tasks. His face looked tired, but there was a light in his eyes, a mix of excitement and worry. This concert meant a lot to him. It wasn't just another show. It was a chance to make a difference. The funds raised today would go to help a community that had faced many hardships. And for Ted, that made every sleepless night worth it. Backstage, the first artist arrived. She was a young pianist who had spent years playing small shows and struggling to be noticed. Her fingers were long and nimble, perfect for the piano, but she had faced so many closed doors. Today was one of her biggest chances. She carried her sheet music carefully, her hands shaking slightly. She took a deep breath, looking at the grand piano in the corner. Its polished black surface seemed to gleam with promise. She whispered to herself, "I can do this. I have to." Meanwhile, another artist was practicing in a small room nearby. He was a singer who had lost almost everything he had tried before. Record deals had fallen through, auditions had ended in rejection, and yet he never stopped dreaming. Today, he would sing not just for himself, but for the cause. He wanted his voice to reach people's hearts. As he ran through the notes, his voice cracked once, then grew stronger. He closed his eyes and imagined the audience smiling, clapping, feeling something real. Ted walked past them, nodding encouragingly. He could see the anxiety in the artist's eyes, and he understood it. He had felt it too, many times. Organizing a concert was not easy. Every detail mattered, and one small mistake could ruin everything. There were lights to check, microphones to test, schedules to coordinate, and hundreds of emails to answer. Ted had spent months arranging this event, often wondering if it would even happen. Sometimes he thought about giving up, but then he remembered why he started. This concert was about hope, and he could not let that hope fade. Outside, volunteers were setting up chairs, carrying boxes of programs, and hanging banners. The hall was slowly coming to life. People would arrive soon, and the energy would be electric. But for now, it was quiet work, filled with careful planning and small conversations. One volunteer paused and looked around. "It's going to be amazing," she said softly. Another nodded, tightening a cable on the soundboard. "Let's make sure everything is perfect." In another corner of the hall, the young pianist was practicing one more time. Her fingers moved over the keys gently, each note full of emotion. She thought about her family, the people she wanted to help, and the audience she hoped would listen. Music had always been her escape, her way of saying what words could not. And now, it was her chance to give something back. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but in this moment, the piano felt like home. Not everything was going smoothly though. Ted received a call that made his heart sink. One of the headlining artists had fallen sick and might not perform. He walked to a quiet corner and ran his hands through his hair. Months of planning could be affected by this one problem. But he refused to panic. He called another performer he knew was ready and asked if they could step in. There was tension, yes, but also a spark of hope. Ted always believed that challenges were part of the journey, and sometimes they brought the best out of people. Meanwhile, the singer was pacing nervously. He had practiced so much, but doubts were creeping in. What if I mess up? He thought. What if no one likes what I do? He stopped and closed his eyes, remembering a phrase his teacher once said, "Music is not about perfection, it's about truth." That thought calmed him. He looked at the stage and imagined the faces in the audience, smiling and listening. With a deep breath, he whispered, "I can do this." Backstage, Ted checked the schedule again. There were still small problems to solve: lights, sound levels, and timing, but the major work was done. He watched the artists preparing, and a smile appeared on his face. Each one had their own story, their own struggles, and their own dreams. And today, they would all come together for a purpose bigger than themselves. It was more than a concert, was a chance to make something meaningful. The young pianist's hands trembled as she approached the stage for the sound check. A technician smiled at her. "Don't worry, just play." She nodded and sat down. As her fingers touched the keys, the first note rang out. It was soft, delicate, and full of emotion. She closed her eyes, letting the music flow through her. Each note carried her fears, her hopes, and her dreams. The sound echoed through the empty hall, but it already felt alive. The singer joined her for a brief rehearsal. Their voices blended, and for a moment, everything felt right. They laughed at small mistakes and encouraged each other. It was in these quiet moments that the magic of the concert began. Outside, volunteers finished setting up, unaware of the emotions building inside. Ted watched from a distance, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. He knew the real test would come when the audience arrived. Then came the news that made everyone hold their breath. A last-minute technical issue had arisen with the main sound system. Ted and his team worked quickly, trying to fix it before doors opened. The artists waited nervously. Every minute felt heavy, and the tension was almost unbearable. Ted's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "We'll get through this," he said. And in that moment, everyone believed him, because they trusted the effort, the passion, and the purpose behind the concert. Finally, the doors opened, and people started entering the hall. Children, parents, elderly couples, and music lovers filled the seats. The energy shifted immediately. The quiet hall became alive with anticipation. Ted walked through the aisles, shaking hands and exchanging smiles. He felt a wave of relief. The hard work was paying off, and the audience's excitement made everything worth it. Backstage, the young pianist took a deep breath. She peeked through the curtain and saw hundreds of faces looking up at her. Her heart pounded. She wanted to be perfect, but she reminded herself that music was not about perfection. It was about sharing. She whispered, "This is for them, and for me." Her fingers hovered over the keys, ready to tell a story without words. The singer waited nearby, pacing lightly. He had watched the pianist and felt inspired. He had always believed in the power of music, but seeing her confidence gave him courage. He practiced a few final notes and smiled. No matter what happened on stage, he knew they were ready. They were prepared to give their hearts fully, and that mattered more than anything. Ted stood quietly in the wings, looking at the audience. He remembered the long nights, the calls that went unanswered, and the doubts that haunted him. But now, everything felt possible. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also the joy of seeing dreams come together. In that moment, he realized that this concert was not just about music. It was about hope, resilience, and the courage to keep going. Then, a hush fell over the audience. The lights dimmed slightly, and a gentle spotlight focused on the piano. The young pianist lifted her hands and pressed the first key. The note rang clearly, and the hall seemed to hold its breath. Every face in the audience turned toward her, waiting. She played the next note, and then another, each one more confident than the last. Her music filled the room, and for a moment, all worries disappeared. The singer joined her for the opening song, their voices blending perfectly. Some audience members whispered to each other, moved by the harmony. Others had tears in their eyes. Backstage, Ted's chest swelled with emotion. The challenges, the sleepless nights, the last-minute problems, they all faded as the music carried everyone forward. For the first time, he felt the true meaning of the concert. Yet, even in this moment of beauty, The tension lingered. Not everything was solved, and not every challenge was behind them. Technical issues could arise, nerves could shake the artists, and the audience's reactions could be unpredictable. But for now, the magic had begun. Each note, each smile, each glance carried a promise that no matter what obstacles existed, passion and heart could shine through. As the first song ended, the pianist looked at the audience, their faces glowing with appreciation. She felt a wave of relief and joy. The singer smiled at her, and Ted wiped a small tear from his eye. This was just the beginning, but it already felt extraordinary. Outside, more people were arriving, unaware of the struggles that led to this moment. Inside, the hall was alive with emotion, anticipation, and hope. And in that quiet pause, just before the next song, everyone backstage and on stage felt the weight of what they were creating, and the meaning behind it. The concert was no longer just an event. It was a story of dreams, struggles, and the courage to try. And the best part? The story was only beginning. The lights were dimmed, and a soft hush spread through the audience. The young pianist's hands rested gently on the keys, her heart beating fast but steady enough to play. Backstage, the singer adjusted his microphone, taking a deep breath. Everyone could feel it, the moment they had been waiting for, when all the hard work, sleepless nights, and doubts would meet reality. The first notes filled the hall. They were soft, fragile, but full of emotion. The audience leaned in, listening as if each note carried a story. The pianist's eyes were closed for a moment, as if she were playing for herself. Then, slowly, she opened her eyes and glanced at the crowd. There was no judgment, only hope and attention. The singer stepped forward, his voice gentle, joining the piano. The melody intertwined with his words, and the hall, once quiet, became alive with emotion. Some audience members wiped tears from their eyes. Others sat in awe, feeling every note vibrate through them. Backstage, Ted watched with a lump in his throat. He had imagined this moment countless times, but it was even more powerful in reality. The young pianist's hands moved faster now, confident and free. Every mistake she had feared faded away. She remembered the struggles, the long nights practicing alone, the doubts that had haunted her, and now, it all seemed worth it. Music had become more than notes on a page. It had become a story, her story, and everyone listening was part of it. The singer, too, felt something he had never felt before. His voice, once shaky, now carried strength and sincerity. Every word he sang came from the heart. He thought about the people who had doubted him, about past failures, and even his own fears. In that moment, none of that mattered. He was sharing something real, and the audience responded with warmth. Ted stepped closer to the stage. He had been busy coordinating every detail, but now he allowed himself a moment to watch. He noticed the small things: the pianist's fingers moving, the singer's glances at the audience, the soft smiles exchanged between performers. This was the magic he had hoped for, the reason behind every call, every sleepless night. Outside the hall, latecomers entered, immediately captivated. The sound of the piano and voice carried beyond the stage, filling every corner. People forgot their phones, their worries, their distractions. They were entirely in the moment, feeling what the performers had worked so hard to convey. Backstage, volunteers exchanged glances. They had spent hours arranging chairs, fixing programs, adjusting lights, and now realized how meaningful the concert had become. They were part of something bigger than themselves. The pianist reached a difficult section of the piece. Her fingers hesitated, but the singer, sensing her tension, looked at her with reassurance. No words were exchanged. A simple glance, a shared understanding, and she continued. The note rang out, clear and strong, echoing through the hall. The audience sensed it too, holding their breath as everyone felt the intensity and emotion of the music. After the first song ended, Applause filled the room. Some stood, some clapped quietly, but every face reflected admiration. The pianist smiled, her nervousness replaced by confidence. The singer nodded at her, acknowledging their teamwork. Ted allowed himself a small smile, proud not just of the performance but of the courage that had brought everyone to this moment. The concert continued, each performance building on the last. A young guitarist played next, his music raw and full of emotion, telling stories of struggle, hope, and determination. The audience leaned in, some closing their eyes, feeling the depth of every note. Backstage, other artists quietly watched, inspired by the courage on stage. Ted moved through the wings, checking that everything was running smoothly, but also allowing himself to feel the moment. He remembered the setbacks, the equipment failures, last-minute cancellations, the moments he feared the concert might not happen. And now, everything had come together beautifully. At one point, the pianist returned for a solo piece. The hall fell silent. She sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and began. Each note told a story, her story of struggle, perseverance, and hope. She thought of those who doubted her, the lonely nights of practice, and the dreams she almost gave up. Her fingers moved with certainty, and the music spoke louder than words could. The audience responded. Some whispered to each other, trying not to disturb the magic. Others were visibly moved, tears in their eyes. It was one of those rare moments when music connects everyone in the same emotion. When people from all walks of life feel something universal and true. Backstage, Ted felt a lump in his throat again. This was why he did all of it. After her solo, the singer joined for another piece. They experimented with a slower, softer melody, letting each note sink deep into the audience. Their voices blended perfectly, creating harmony that was delicate yet powerful. The performance was not flawless, but it was perfect in its honesty. The audience understood it, felt it, and responded with warmth. As the performance ended, applause filled the hall once more. People rose, cheering, clapping enthusiastically. The performers stood together, breathing heavily, hearts full. Ted joined them, clapping with the audience, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. All the planning, all the stress, all the challenges they had led to this moment. The concert was not only about the main performers. Throughout the evening, smaller acts, volunteers, and local artists also contributed. Each added something unique, rhythm, a voice, a story. The audience responded warmly, appreciating every effort. It was not just a show. It was a community coming together. Backstage, the energy was electric. Artists hugged, volunteers exchanged high fives, and Ted walked slowly, observing. The concert had begun as an event, but it had become a lesson in courage, resilience, teamwork, and hope. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had led to a shared triumph. The young pianist, still catching her breath, looked at the audience one last time. She noticed the smiles, the tears, the nods of appreciation. She felt proud, not for herself, but for the people she had reached with her music. Every difficult moment, every rejection, every lonely practice had been worth it. She had shared something real, and that mattered more than any applause. The singer placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "We did it," he whispered. They smiled, knowing it was about giving, connecting, and creating something meaningful. Together, they had succeeded. Ted stepped to the center of the stage, addressing the audience. His voice was calm, but full of emotion. He thanked performers, volunteers, and the audience. He spoke about the purpose of the concert, the cause it supported, and the importance of community. The audience listened attentively, applauding after each sentence. As the final piece began, all artists returned for a collaborative performance. The hall filled with music, laughter, and energy. The audience could feel the emotion, the connection, and dedication behind every note. Some clapped along, some closed their eyes. All shared the experience. It was a perfect ending, not flawless, but full of honesty and heart. When the final note faded, there was silence, followed by thunderous applause. People stood, cheering, some wiping tears, others smiling widely. The performers took a bow, exhausted but happy. Ted stepped forward, tears in his eyes, realizing that every obstacle, doubt, and late night had led to this moment. It was proof that passion, persistence, and heart could create something extraordinary. As the crowd dispersed, artists hugged, volunteers packed up, and Ted lingered, taking in the empty hall. The lights reflected softly off the polished floor, reminding him of the morning when the hall was quiet, empty, and full of possibility. Now, it was quiet, again, but filled with memories, emotion, and hope. In that quiet, Ted thought, this is only the beginning. There is so much more we can do. The concert had ended, but the impact, lessons, and inspiration would last far beyond that night.